right, so we are finally in the new Aston Martin. I'm sitting here with Alek Ackerman, who, I must tell you, is a walking encyclopedia of anything Aston Martin, and I am privileged to have him in this car. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me along for the ride. You're the first person to review Aston Martin Vantage that we've actually let in the car, really. It's brand new, so, right, for us.
It's a real privilege for me, and thank you to Grand Touring Automobiles for lending me Alex for the rest of today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so, you know, my first impressions with this, it's got a fantastic seating position. I'm actually very, very comfortable. I sit, you know, I feel like I'm sitting pretty low. I feel like I'm coddled in here, and I'm having a really, really good first drive. Literally, guys, this is my first drive in this thing. So, you know, my first question to you, before we start, you know, doing all sorts of things with the shifts and getting it going, things like that, is why did it take Aston Martin so long to come out with this vehicle?
Well, so we've been refining the formula for years and years and years on the previous Vantage, and we knew that when we introduced the next generation of Vantage, it was going to have to be really special, right? So it wasn't something that we were just going to sort of introduce overnight. Plus, in the background, there's this partnership with Mercedes-AMG that was budding, right? We really, all of that though was leading up to this product. So we had already had the V8 engine out in the DB11, and that gave us sort of a chance to you know, get an idea of how that engine would perform. And we had to do a lot of work before this car actually came to market. There's probably about 4 years of design and engineering and stress testing of this car before it came out.
Wow, because it's been about 10 years, I think. Over 10 years before the first version of this, and I alluded to that, I actually owned the first version of this. Back, I think it was 2011 or so. I had the production vehicle that was the second iteration with the 4.7 liter.
So they had a 4.3, then 4.7, and then they did a whole bunch of European-only versions. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
European-only versions like the GT8 and GT12, which were based on the actual endurance race cars. But that's another thing worth note is, so the original vehicle, they said, okay, here's this beautiful car, now let's get it to compete in endurance racing in the GTE class. We actually won in 24 Hour of Le Mans. Crazy to think that we could go and do that with that previous generation of car. With this one, they said from day one, we're going to design it alongside our endurance race cars. So this vehicle is really kind of a bit of a race car for the road, and it's the most performance-oriented Aston from day one.
Right, and it was that the target? Was that where this was going to be sort of slotted in?
Yeah, ever since a very early age in developmental process, this car's nickname was the Hunter because it was supposed to be the most assertive, the most aggressive car we'd ever made. So, I mean, the driving position, the fact that it has track mode on even the entry-level car, it is a weapon of a vehicle.
Wow.
Think AMG GTS, or GTR really, but 4 inches shorter, 3.5 inches shorter, and close to 400 pounds lighter.
Wow, wow. Well, I'll tell you right now, so from an engine response point of view, this is really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
And so that partnership you talked about, in the original Aston, they had their own engine, right? Right, so this one's sourced. I guess what I'm trying to say is, was there any issue with them actually using the AMG? Is it? Well,
so there was a lot of process that went into actually making that AMG engine really fit in the character of an Aston Martin. So, you know, they've taken the AMG engine, but they have tuned it to an Aston spec to make it sound the way that an Aston is and to perform the way that we would expect an Aston to, because at the end of the day, Mercedes and Aston Martin should still be very different cars, right? So when we get this block, we put a different air intake system on it, we put a different exhaust manifold on it, we actually rewire the ECU on the car to have a different firing order. So the cars, if you had I've had the chance to drive an AMG GTR right next to an Aston Vantage, and the idle doesn't even sound the same between the two of them.
See, that sounds like a great comparator we should be doing.
Oh, we should, yeah. Bring one over and we'll go for a rip.
Let's do it. Mercedes, are you listening? Okay.
Two green cars.
Two green cars. I love it. I love it. Okay, so my initial impression about this, it has got a lot of response. The throttle is really good.
Yes.
There's a bassy note to this without being, let's say, too American.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Well, that's always been the character of Aston Martin historically. It was almost like an English muscle car, right? And this is definitely fitting with that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It was all the car.
It's an awesome engine. But to your point there, the responsiveness, we're riding on over 500 pound-feet of torque. So if you measure that up to other vehicles, an 812 Superfast is only 40 or 50 more torques than this car produces in a much larger, heavier package. So yeah, it just feels constantly, and especially also you had the past Vantage, but your daily right now is the GT3 RS, right? That's a car that you get a lot of power out of, but you have it high up in the rev range.
Correct. That's a normally aspirated.
It goes to 9,000 RPM. It's insane. This is a very different character where you got pretty much the torque from 1500.
Right.
It doesn't rev as high, but because of that, we have to have that torque available very, very low down.
Right. Because I'm feeling the pull. The pull is from 0 onwards. It's a really, really addictive feel to just sort of put. I don't know if you can. Our heads are sort of going backwards a little bit every time we do this.
It's mischievous. It feels, and it's intoxicating.
I like that. about it. So the transmission, I find now I'm shifting. As I'm pulling those shifts, it is really moving very quickly as I go up. There's a little bit of sluggishness. I wouldn't call it like sluggishness, but it's definitely different when I downshift.
Yes.
And is that because, and I'll say it here, it's a single clutch?
It's a single plate clutch. So coming from the PDK in the GT3 RS, which is arguably the fastest transmission right now available. There might be one at Ferrari that's kind of in that same league. This is a single plate clutch, but the stuff that they've managed to do with the single plate clutch is tremendous. They took the ZF 8-speed, they made it transaxle, it's placed at the rear of the car, carbon fiber prop shaft between front and rear, and we've measured it on upshift. It's just about as fast. I think it's right there with a GTS 911. On downshift, it's not as fast, but the weight difference is actually pretty tremendous between the two transmissions. This, interestingly enough, is it depends on how you configure it, how much carbon. It's about 300 pounds heavier than a GTS 911 with a V8 engine.
I see. Okay.
So it's a good weight place to be.
So the design was specifically, because this is not the ultimate ultralight car.
No, this is the starting point.
This is the starting point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the starting point already is they say 3.4 seconds 0 to 60, but Motor Trend got it to 3.2.
Oh, there you go. I wonder how much we can get this down to. All right. We'll slow it down. We're in a zone here that we should take it easy.
Yeah.
But so the other thing I noticed about this, the brakes are really, really grippy.
Yes, so the standard vehicles come with a steel brakes. They're high-performance braking system as standard. Our chief of engineering, his name is Matt Becker. He previously came from Lotus, and he was one of the many people who helped to calibrate the brakes. And as you notice, on the street, they're really, really substantial. On a track, they're what you want. And we did this specifically with the intention of customers taking these cars to the racetrack in the entry-level guise. There is a CCB option. We're using the newer standard. Instead of the matrix brakes, we're using the CCB generation of Brembos. So those are the ones with the silicon carbide coatings you see on like the P1.
Oh yes.
And they are incredible. I've had a chance to drive both of them around the racetrack at Navarra in northern Spain, and I gotta say, like, if you are a track fiend and you're there every weekend, go with the CCBs. It's worth every dollar. Wow,
that's great. One of the things I'm going to touch on here, now that we talked about the mechanics of it, is the design.
Yes.
So when I looked at this on the pictures, one of the things that sort of confronted me, and I have to use the word confronted me, was the front grille.
Yes.
However, after seeing it in person, I must say that it isn't as polarizing a topic as I think was being discussed.
Well, it was polarizing. It was, and you know what, I think you can use the words controversial. The front grille and the front headlights in this car were controversial because it was something that you see and it takes you a couple of seconds to even just get used to the fact that this is the design direction for Aston Martin. In the same way that when a lot of people saw the DB10, they were like, what even is this? This is just so different. But you got to remember, they're producing products for the next 10 years that will be able to continuously evolve and get more and more aggressive over the years. But the design direction, once you've seen it a couple times in person, it is an Aston Martin in that you see it and you immediately are, wow, that's incredible, striking. And then over the time that you spend with it, it gets more and more beautiful and you see it from different angles. It's a bit Vulcan, a bit DB10 in a blender.
Right. So you just said something that really piqued my interest, because you're doing such a good job of explaining this car that you might get me to buy one. Like you really might get me to buy one. But you mentioned something. So this seems to be, from what you're saying,
yes, the
initial step in what could be a more expansive line of the Vantage product?
Yes. So the English have this totally bogus term for it that doesn't make any sense in like our version of English. They call it bloodlines, but it's basically a family, right? This is going to expand into a family. There's definitely going to be a convertible version of this. There's definitely going to be a more track-focused manual transmission. Hello, GT3 touring kind of spec.
Okay.
With a manual transmission, which is in engineering right now. There's going to be more hardcore versions of this car, but even just from the entry level, this vehicle here, it's already a successor to both the V8 and the V12, because it's actually faster around a racetrack than even our existing V12S Vantage. It's a serious car.
Wow. That is exciting news for somebody like me to hear, because I would love to take my cars to the track. I mean, I'm doing that right now, and still be able to drive this car daily.
Yes.
And now that I've spent, the last, 20 minutes to half an hour in this car, it responds very, very, very well.
And you're still in Sport Plus.
I'm still in Sport Plus.
Road and track
so
mode.
I'm going to put this in track for all. Here we go.
There you go.
There we go.
Track mode. And now you get the full actual control over.
Right. So I noticed that so now the steering is just even more responsive.
Yes.
Than when it was in Sports Plus.
Yes.
This is so addictive. Why I won't even bother leaving it in the regular.
That's what I do. I immediately put it into track mode and I drive it everywhere like I stole it.
But the sound from the back, I don't know if anybody. It's so great. It's so glorious.
Well, we did a lot of market research, and like the number one thing always that when we talk to people, they say is it's the sound of an Aston Martin. It's its voice, and it's like one of the number one selling features. So we spent literally over a year in design and engineering the exhaust note on this car, and it sounds wicked. Like there's no other word for it.
It sounds glorious.
Yeah.
If you could just park your ears there, it is just wonderful, and I'm going to get some of that time. You can hear it coming through the cabin, which is great. It is really, truly great to hear that all the time. But when you settle it down, it really blends into the whole aura, the excitement about this car.
And the functionality is there. Like, I mean, you can drive it around where it is quiet if you wanted to, or you can drive it around like an ape like me. You have the trunk space in this car is the same as the front trunk on a 911 and the back seats, and then another 5 liters. So it's the largest trunk space in class, which means you could drive with it every day. But then on the flip side of things, performance-wise, it's been benchmarked against the GTS 911. So around a racetrack, it will outperform a GTS, just in the hands of a race car driver. But then on the flip side of things, that's our entry. So our most affordable Aston Martin has to be at that level of performance, is what we're basically saying. It's got to be at least that fast.
Got it.
Everything else will be faster.
Wow. That is exciting news to hear. So my one last comment about this thing is that I came here not sort of knowing what to expect.
Yes.
Sort of having that thought about my old Aston Martin, which was a lot of show. Somewhat slightly muted show. The Go part of it. But this one, just initially driving this thing feels like it's hit all the right tick marks. Like I'm getting great response from an engine, a wonderful sound. The design, I must say, is much better in person that I've seen in any sort of the pictures. And it's better than I thought it was going to be.
And you know, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned that, like, as we give this to more and more members of the media and hear their reactions, it's fascinating to hear what they have to say about how well-rounded a product it is.
Right now, just being able to drive in something like this at this price point and think about what other cars that this is supposedly going what the competitors or in the class is. I would think this would be more around, as you said, the 911 GTS, maybe R8.
I'd say Audi R8. They make those new ones with the rear-wheel drive. This vehicle really, well, I mean, that was their head-to-head with Motor Trend. They did it against the rear-wheel drive one, and it was really interesting to hear how they have to, you know, what they have to say about it. Those hot V turbochargers are so responsive, and they can create so much torque from so low down that you get this really interesting advantage over even the 10-cylinder naturally aspirated.
Wow.
So it is a wicked piece of kit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you so much for spending time with us on this channel.
No problem.
I must say it. So one last thing I'm going to do, because we're on the highway now, is just rip the heck out of this thing. Woo! All right, so we'll leave it like that. That is fantastic acceleration.
Yeah.
Right? That is really good.
Throw it in track mode now, and then drop it down a gear. Throw it in the passing lane, and go full throttle.
Whoa!
Now shift. Yeah.
That is extraordinarily fast.
Yeah, and now you feel the upshifts, how quick they are.
Very fast.
Like very, very snappy.
Very, very. So this lives sometime. I mean, at this.
It's not like a regular 8-cylinder where you're kind of running out of steam at 4,500.
Right.
Like it'll go all the way out, and I find myself driving them kind of at the top end of that.
So Alex, with all the power and the throttle response and the precise steering, are we going to take this on the track?
Yeah, we should. We definitely are going to start doing some track days with them. I want to get them at the racetrack, because when you get one of these around, I mean, especially Mossburg, we have a brilliant track here in Canada, in Ontario. When you get this thing around the racetrack, you get an entirely different understanding and appreciation for the car. And this baby was meant to go around the racetrack.
I agree. So what I'm hearing is that you're inviting me to take this out to the track with you.
Yes.
Excellent. Alex, I am telling you that you are going to be a regular on this channel if you keep talking like that.
I like the idea of this.
Okay, well, that's it for us here at Drives to Smiles. Go on the YouTube, like it, subscribe if you want, hit the notification bell. The other thing I want you to do is Alex Ackerman has
I got a YouTube channel as well. It's Alek Ackerman. Subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Get to see how we spec the cars.
There you go. And you know what? Put in the comments if you like this sort of discourse, because I kind of like Alex, and this has actually worked out quite well. Let us know if you want us to do something like this again.
We'll hook it up.
That's excellent. Alex, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.